So, GM, everybody. I am Yusuf, and I'm your host for the Glassy Hours. So, for the people who are here for the first time, what are Glassy Hours? It's a bi-weekly online series in which we cover any topic around Solana development. And today we got John, and he's one of the engineers on the Token 2022 program. And well, in the Solana docs, it's defined as a superset of the functionality provided by the token program. And this session does not require any prior knowledge, so you're all welcome. And I'd just like to hand it over to John and yeah, give it over to him.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see a couple of familiar faces. This will be a pretty similar presentation that I gave at Breakpoint in 2022. Yeah, 2022 on Token22, except it's going to have a couple more of the enhancements that we've done since then. So hopefully it'll be interesting. Hopefully we'll be able to get through this quite quickly. It's like we've got not a super huge group. This means that hopefully we'll have time for questions afterwards, because especially some of the new stuff, unfortunately, not all the tooling is built out just yet. We're sort of at the point of sprinting towards the end so that we can get it audited one last time, and then we'll probably make some nicer client libraries and documentation. Some of it has some pretty good documentation, but it's all getting there. So with all that said, I will share my screen. Hopefully nothing embarrassing is going to happen. Apparently I can't share.
Let me check it out 1 second. Does it work now?
Hold on, let me try. We'll stop other participants' computer sound share. Can I stop your computer sound share?
Yes, of course.
Okay, cool. I'm going to do my full screen just because there's a lot of stuff. I'll be going back and forth between a presentation and then running some stuff just so you can see that this stuff really does work. Okay, so let's start off. So, so this is important. It's called Token 2022, but we had a really long chat with marketing and with a lot of other people. And so they want to call it Token 22 as the official name. It's still going to be called Token 22 to 2022 all over the code. I really goes either way. I might get a slap on the wrist for marketing about this, but they're not here, and that's fine. So I'll be talking to you about it. I'm John, so I'm one of the engineers at Solana Labs. I've been working on-chain programs for the most part. For example, Token 2022, stake pools, token swap. I worked on some DIDs, decentralized identifiers with the Civic team, and then a few other projects here and there. So we're going to go through this about why are we even writing a new token program. And then I'm going to talk about the extensions that exist in Token 22, and then we'll sort of go over them with an FAQ, and then some of them will have some shell scripts that I'm going to run so you can see the functionality in action. All right, so why are you probably thinking this? SPL token, it works, everyone really likes it. It's sort of like a constant on the network. Why would you make a change to that? Well, the problem is it doesn't really do enough. It's very simple, and a lot of times people have really cool ideas of other things they want to do with tokens, and it's very hard to get adoption for a new token program. So our idea was, well, let's launch a new thing. It's going to have to be done at some point. Let's rip off the Band-Aid, and we're going to go ahead and create a new token program, even though it's no longer 2022. I've been thinking about that quite a bit. Maybe we can think about it as like C++11, C++14, or Rust 2021, Rust 2018. So it's like, it's more of the standard came out that year, but then it takes a long time for people to adopt the standard. And then every time I would have conversations about this, people would usually stop me. It's like, are you sure? It's like, it's not really the best idea. You're going to have a long time doing this. It's going to be tricky. I think overall, this will be extremely valuable. If people can start programming their on-chain programs, their wallets, all that, with the knowledge that there might be more than one token program, I think that it'll be easier to go to any other number of token programs. So this is sort of I think, a good step in the right direction to level the playing field a little bit for token programs and start to look a little bit more like an Ethereum style ecosystem where people can really implement their tokens however they want. And a lot of times people will be like, even at the end of 2022, people will be like, are you sure you still want to call it this? It's like, yes, it's fine. Don't worry about it. All right. So as Yusuf mentioned in the beginning, Token22 is a superset of SPL token. So this means that all of the structs and everything have the same ABI as SPL token. So for example, transfer looks exactly the same. Mint looks exactly the same. The difference is you opt into extensions, which are written after the 165th byte. This is very important because at the time of SPL token, we didn't have the idea that that accounts could change their data or could have different sizes of data. We were like, well, oh yeah, you know it's a mint if it's 82 bytes. You know it's a token account if it's 165 bytes. That's easy. We don't need to write an account discriminator anywhere. It was 2020, you know, before the bull market, before the big bull run. No one knew what they were doing. So we have to write things after that 165th byte for any of the new data. And so what's nice about this, it means that it makes it super easy for RPC to index all of this stuff. It makes it for existing programs to very easily deserialize accounts just as before. Nothing has really changed as far as the base functionality is concerned. You might be wondering if you can use this. Yes, Token22 is out on all networks, and I have to put this in like huge important, I should have put it bold and not italics, for testing purposes. The reason that we want to make that very clear is that the whole burn excitement that happened, was it like 3 weeks ago? I can't even remember. That was a little bit of a scary moment because there was a lot of value all of a sudden on this program, which is still upgradable, which hasn't been which has 4 audits, but still is not like fully vetted. So just if you want to use it on mainnet, you can, but beware that it's not completely ready and something might change. Otherwise, if you pick up the Solana tools past 1.14.17, you'll already have Token22 in your test validator and everything. If you use the JavaScript library SPL token greater than version 0.3, you'll also pick it up. And then if you use the SPL token CLI greater than 2.2, greater or equal to 2.2, you'll also just have Token22 support already built in. You might be asking who supports it. And there's been some progress since I first did this presentation. So the base stuff is mostly there, like RPC indexes Token22. Anchor has support for either program or both as an interface. Wallets, we've got Backpack that supports it now, and I think others are starting to integrate it. DeFi protocols are still pretty limited. There's mainly SPL token swap, and whatever the Burn team did for their decks that they created, I think they just took that code, but I'm not entirely sure. For metadata, Metaplex won't be able to, unfortunately. They can't, they're running up against the account limit for the program data. So it means that they're not doing any upgrades. Well, hopefully they'll be able to do some upgrades by 1.16, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. So we're going to be rolling our own token metadata, and I'll get into that a little bit later. As I mentioned earlier, it's like, is this safe? It's pretty safe. We've had 4 audits and one more that's going to start probably in like a week or 2. And that's going to cover some changes that we've done to confidential tokens and then all the new features that we've added since the last audit. So as I mentioned, it is currently upgradable. That is something to keep in mind. If you trust me, we're moving it to a multi-sig very soon, but currently it's really just me. So it means if you want to put a lot of value on this program, you're putting a lot of trust in me. We'll officially recommend the program probably after 1.16 hits mainnet, which we're expecting to happen sometime in the September timeframe. And we're not entirely sure just yet. We might freeze it roughly 6 months after that, or maybe we'll distribute the program to a larger multi-sig that includes big ecosystem participants. We're not 100% sure just yet. All right, so now time to get to the fun stuff. You might want to ask, like, what are some of the extensions that you can add to token accounts? So the extensions that we've got for now, and I'm going to talk about them very quickly now so that we can get into them more in depth after. So you've got confidential transfers, which just masks transfer amounts, doesn't mask anything else at the moment. So it's not anonymous, it's confidential, very different. The CPI guard, which is a pretty cool one. This essentially protects your token account from certain easy rug attacks. So it makes it such that your token account cannot transfer in a CPI context unless it is signed by a delegate. So this means that if you sign an instruction to a shady program with your account, that program can't actually do a CPI into token in order to steal your tokens. I think that's really cool. The other one is requirement of a memo on transfer. We'll get into that, why that might be nice later. And then immutable ownership, which is particularly cool for associated token accounts, so that this way, when you create your associated token account for a particular mint on Token22, you cannot reassign the ownership to anyone else. And then you think that's okay, that's pretty cool. What about for mints? We've got a lot of stuff for mints. We've got confidential transfers. It sort of needs to be done on both sides. You can even audit your confidential transfers at the mint level if you want. You can add transfer fees. This was pretty popular with a lot of the sort of burn style tokens that were created. You can close your mint. This is more useful for NFTs than anything else. You can have interest-bearing tokens. It's more of a UI trick where it will make it look as if the number of tokens increases over time, which can be useful for certain situations. You can have tokens be totally non-transferable, which is pretty cool. You can default accounts to have a certain state, be it frozen or not frozen. That's some pretty cool use cases too, which we'll go over. You can have a permanent delegate, which means technically every token can be moved by some other authority, some greater authority. This is really important for government type and stable type coins. We'll go over that some more. There's transfer hook that you can add in to your token such that during transfer, the token program or Token22 will call into some other program with some other set of accounts so that you can do whatever you want in order to validate a transfer or update some fields. Is really up to you there. And then eventually we do have the metadata pointer at the moment, and then eventually adding metadata directly into the mint, which I think people hopefully will be pretty excited about. That's hopefully something I do this week finally. All right, so it's a lot of stuff. So we're going to go through it bit by bit, a little bit slower. So if you don't understand what they're all for, we'll go over token designs and then see how you can do it through Token22. Then I'll give an answer. And then if you want, most of the stuff is already covered in the documentation at spl.solana.com. We work pretty hard on it. So obviously, if there's any issues, you can reach out about it, or you put in a GitHub issue. That's where the docs are hosted, and then we can fix or add whatever you need. All right, so first, you've heard about compressed NFTs, maybe. So how could you make a token that can be compressed, decompressed, recompressed, and work with an off-chain Merkle tree? So this one's pretty easy. You can create a mint with the close mint authority extension, which allows you to close and reopen the mint if the supply is 0. So I'll give a real quick demo of what that might look. I've got a test validator running with the latest version of Token2022 and another program, which you'll see. So I've got a bunch of scripts, which you'll see here, which are really all on the left, all those shell scripts there. And I'll try and go through all of them. So right now, you'll see the very simple one. This is for the first one. Essentially, we're just going to create a mint and then close it and then recreate it, as you'll see in these lines over here. So if I run this, so you'll see that we started up here. Where is it? We created the token here, and then we closed it, and then we recreated it. Pretty simple. And it's all under the same ID. So especially NFTs, I think will probably be pretty excited about this so that they don't need to leave a ton of accounts in state. All right, another token design is you want to send your token without anyone knowing how much you have or how much you transferred? Well, you add the confidential transfer extension to your mint. So the way that this works roughly is you have your token account. It has a certain amount of tokens in it. You deposit the tokens from the non-confidential side into the confidential side. And then, so that first deposit will be public. And then after that, every single transfer that you do will be encrypted and then eventually validated through zero knowledge proofs entirely on chain. So this way, if I start off with 100 USDC, I do a deposit of all those into my confidential part. And then if I want to transfer it, all the amounts that I use will be encrypted. So I could transfer 0, make it look like I did something, but in the end, nothing actually happened. So this is a very common way to build anonymous tokens, but that's a whole other level of encryption, or rather token design. So this used to require larger transaction sizes, but one of the big things that our cryptographer has worked on this year is splitting up the proofs so that each one can fit within a current Solana transaction. So this means that it'll take, let's say, 3 transactions to actually do one of these zero knowledge, or rather confidential transfers, but you'll be able to do it without much greater cost on your side. We'll eventually increase the transaction size, probably in 1.18 at this point. So you assume that'll hit mainnet in like March of 2024. So it takes a lot of time to develop these things, unfortunately. All right, so another token design is, let's say you run a stake pool or a lending protocol, and you want the token number to go up over time along with the value of the token. And what you would do with that is use the interest-bearing extension and have the protocol update the interest rate every epoch. So for example, I'm going to get something up and running for you here. So if we look at number 3, pretty much we're just going to create it with an interest rate of, 320%. Why not? And it's not going to show just yet, but then we'll reset the interest rate to some other amount. So we go through this. It's not being parsed perfectly just yet, but the idea is that you can set the interest rate to the amount of basis points that you want. And as I mentioned earlier, very quickly, this is entirely a UI trick. So the number of tokens, as far as the contract is concerned, does not change. But if you want to show the UI amount, that will change over time to reflect whatever the interest rate is set to. This is a bit of a strange one. We've gone through so many designs of how we think interest-bearing tokens should work on Solana. And although this feels like a bit of a cheat, it's really the best option, because otherwise distributing tokens at a fixed interval is a very hard problem. If you want to do it with a large number of people, there's really no great way to do it. You can fight me on that if you want. Okay, so let's say you want to create a payment system like a bank, and you want there to be some sort of monthly statements for your clients. And then of course you don't want them to get rugged by any sketchy protocols. So a way that you could do that is enforce that all of your client token accounts have memo transfers. This means that any single time funds come into someone's account, they must be accompanied by a memo. And this even works in CPI context. It works everywhere. And then you can also add the CPI guard extension. And in this way, all DApp transfers must go through a delegate. This means that you can sign with your wallet account and you can provide your token account, you can provide the token program, but if that CPI guard is on, they can't actually move anything unless your delegate has signed, which I think is pretty neat. Do I have an example for this one? I do. All right, so this one takes a little bit longer. So you'll see, we bring it up, you'll see that we'll create a token, create some accounts. We'll have required transfer memos on one of them. I didn't put in the CPI guard. We can do that another time. So when I try to transfer the first time, if you look up, it failed with an error. You must provide a memo. And then eventually I do it again with the find memo, and then it goes through up here. So this way you see that it's being enforced on chain. Oh yeah, this is a pretty cool example too. So let's say you're running a game and you're minting tokens or NFTs, whatever it might be for your game, and you do not want people to just dump them on any exchange. I mean, that's not always the case. Some people do obviously want their token holders to be able to sell anywhere in order to make the market as liquid as possible. But let's say you really only want it to stay within a game ecosystem. In that case, you can create the mint with the default account set to frozen. And this means that player have to go through you or some other service to unfreeze their account. This is, I think, this is a sneaky, really, really nice one, I think. So if we look at what this is going to do, yeah, this one's pretty simple. It's just going to create the token with the default account state frozen. And then we're going to create an account and see that it is in fact frozen. This is a great way to create any sort of a, so you see it is frozen. No one has frozen it explicitly. It is implicitly frozen just on creation because of the default account state. So this way you can create sort of your own ecosystem of tokens and know that no one else can use your token. I think that's going to be a pretty popular one that people have slept on a bit. All right, so this is where we get a little more complicated now. Let's say you're running a DAO and you want a privileged token for all of your council members. So this way, let's say you've got a certain council and you've got your larger voting population and you only have like, let's say 10 council members in your DAO, and you want each one of them to have a token with which that they can vote. You don't want them obviously to sell or move it to anyone else. And if the council member is doing something wrong, or if they want to back out from the DAO, you want them to be able to revoke that token. So how do you do that? You need a few things. You permanently delegate all of the tokens to the DAO so that they can use a vote in order to burn council member's token. And then you make the tokens non-transferable. So that means no one can move them or sell them or anything like that. The bonus that you get is if you have the non-transferable mint extension, it forces immutable ownership. So this means that a token account can only ever be owned by one person. So you might be saying like, okay, wow, that's a lot of cool features, but like, seriously, just let me program my own token, which we do hear a lot. So it's still not possible currently. We're working, this is sort of a long-term project. Essentially, we need to create a lot of interfaces to describe tokens and then start getting people to use them. It's going to take a long time. But in the meantime, you can configure your mint to call into some other program that implements a certain interface. So I'm speaking very vaguely on purpose just because there's a lot of details here. But roughly speaking, the way it works is that your token registers with this program, and then during any transfer, the token program will call into this program with whatever set of accounts are going to be required. And then your program validates that everything is correct. It can even make changes. We have some certain safeguards in place in order to avoid propagating things like signer or writable status, so that this way, inside of the transfer hook program, you won't get, for example, the owner as a signer. You will just get the owner as they were. I think this is a really cool one. It's going to take some time also to get people to adopt it, just because we're talking about variable numbers of accounts during a transfer. It's tricky, but we've created a lot of really nice SDKs to do these, hopefully in an easy way. So you mentioned something about metadata. Does that mean there's going to be more than one metadata program? That sounds like chaos. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It definitely would be really bad for there to be a huge amount of metadata programs, and then you never know which one is sort of like the correct metadata. So that's why in Token22, you have a metadata pointer extension that only lets you specify which account holds the metadata for your mint. Obviously, the first thing you're going to think is like, that's super easily spoofable. I can just point my token's metadata at USDC and everyone's going to think that my token is USDC. I mean, they could, but I would say for safety, make sure that the mint and the metadata point at each other. So that way, you know that there is, that it works on both sides. So this way, if you see that, let's say you point at USDC, but USDC doesn't point back at you, then someone will know that something's up, that there might be something sketchy going on. You might then just think, can we just put the metadata in the mint? The answer is, oops. Oh no, did I not put the answer? Oh yeah, there it is. Yes, you can. We're working on this too. So there's going to be a metadata extension where you just put everything in the mint. So this means you would have the metadata pointer, which would just point at itself. And then it would also contain all the metadata immediately in there. So you might be thinking, okay, well, yeah, these features sound great, but I already have lots and lots of token holders. How can I migrate to Token 2022? So one way is you can create your new mint with all the new features that you want, and then use the SPL token upgrade program to convert them. It's a pretty simple stateless protocol that essentially burns on one side, burns old tokens and transfers new tokens. You just mint a bunch of new tokens into some escrow, and then it'll handle that movement. And what's cool is that you can use this between any two mints. It doesn't necessarily need to be token and Token 2022. You could go between Token 2022 and Token Keg, however you want to do it. You might be thinking, yeah, cool, but let's say I don't want to burn the tokens. Let's say you have a stable coin or something and you have some government oversight that forces you to do this. That's fine. Eventually, this has been since Breakpoint in 2022. Eventually, someone will get around to writing the token wrapping program. There is a proposal for it. It's pretty simple, which essentially allows you to wrap between any two mints. So this way, I think is probably going to be the way to go for Token 22 adoption. So this way, you would take a mint on Token 2022, wrap it inside of Token Keg, and then use that in DeFi. Obviously, it can come with some sort of a fragmentation of liquidity, but we also have to make these things usable. I think it's just going to take time. Next, you might be thinking you already have an on-chain program. How can you add support for Token 2022? So there's really two answers to this. If you're just using one token in an instruction, it's pretty simple. You just need to change a couple of checks. But if you're using multiple token programs at once, like in a trade, let's say you're trading USDC on Token Keg for the burn token on Token 2022, it's tough because you need to have the new and the old token program both in your instruction, and you need to invoke the correct one. But there's lots of docs and examples about how you can integrate this. You might also be thinking, I work on a wallet. How can I integrate Token 2022? It's pretty easy. I did it for Backpack. It took me probably like 4 or 5 hours of work, and I didn't know the Backpack code base at all. So not really too bad, but I guess I knew Token 22 pretty well. So, I had a little bit of an advantage. So you'll see there are some docs at the spl.solana.com. You might be thinking at this point, I'm a bit overwhelmed. That's fine. We're done here. So you've got the docs for Token 22, for token upgrade. Hopefully, eventually we'll have some docs for token wrap, but that's pretty much it from me. Oh yeah, I had an example with the token upgrade, but I would say I consider we've got not a huge group. So let's, I want to open up time for more questions, and then I can always run the example then. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, John. So let's just go right into the questions. Do we have any questions? So I saw that Chris asked, what's the difference between confidential and anonymous?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, is my screen still sharing?
I think you ended the screen share.
Zoom is bugging out on me. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, no, Zoom is really bad. Okay, well, you can see me.
Yep, loud and clear. And you're not sharing your screen. You're good.
Oh, darn, that really stinks. Okay. Okay, here I can see the chat. That's good. All right, so yeah, confidential transfers just means that you're masking the amount that's being transferred, whereas anonymous transfers means that you're masking who's doing it. And we've talked about ways of how we would implement this. And the way to do it, at least one of the ways that our cryptographer is thinking, is to do it through the Monero model, in which you would have multiple accounts initiate a transfer to multiple different places. And only one of those is sort of like the real one. And since you're transferring zero amounts, they're encrypted though. No one knows that you're transferring 0. You do a bunch of 0 transfers to a bunch of places, and you do one real transfer to one other place. And if you keep doing that, there's so much mixing around, people won't actually know which account is yours and which account actually has the funds.
You're muted, Yusuf.
My bad. Okay. Yeah, we had another question from Elizabeth. If you could share the slides with us.
Yeah, actually, I'll make a note of that somewhere. I use this thing called Reveal MD in order to do it quite easily, but I'm thinking like this is all just Markdown, so I can just, share some Markdown or just put it on the docs. I'll probably just put it on the docs. That'll be easiest.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. Then Carlos also asked about interfaces and what these are exactly.
Yeah, so interfaces are kind of a cool concept. The idea is that if a program accepts a certain instruction, which means a certain set of bytes for an instruction or a certain format of bytes that represents an instruction along with a certain set of accounts, you can say that it implements an interface. So this way you can have just a very simple SDK, which creates, for example, a transfer instruction, but then can send it to any number of programs. You can send it to SPL token, SPL token 2022, your token program, doesn't really matter. That's the big concept, is that as long as someone says like, hey, I have implemented this interface in my program, which means you can call it like this and assume that it's going to do something like this. This is the way that programs work on Ethereum, not on Solana, because we have this sort of like monolithic model. But in order to encourage more people to develop their own stuff, I think we really do need to have better interfaces for them to implement. So that's sort of like vaguely.
So is it a standardization of input accounts and data?
Yeah, pretty much. It doesn't need to be data, but at least input in the instruction data and set of accounts.
Thanks.
Awesome. So there was one more question from Mike, and he asked if it is possible to create a non-transferable NFT in an on-chain program.
To create, yeah, sure. What is there something more to that? You can do whatever you want.
Okay. Questions that I might have missed in the chat?
Just haven't found an example yet.
We have an example repository or something for Mike.
Yeah, let me see. I think we just have it just doing it from the CLI, but the CLI is just calling instructions into the program anyway. So you could just break that down if you want to do it on chain.
All right. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, then
hold on. I do have one more, but there was the point of the API, the compounding tokens. I forgot that exact slide, but my question is when it does compound, you mentioned that it doesn't get sent out automatically. So is that like the old staking model where you like have to claim your tokens, and the Token22 is just storing the amount of tokens that you're able to claim, or how does that work?
So it's really just a UI trick. That's the important. That's the big thing, is that it's continuously compounding, and the idea is that it's just a UI thing. So for example, let's say you underneath have one token, you query it, let's say right at the inception of the mint, it'll say one token. You query it one slot later, and let's say it's gained a little bit of interest, it'll say you have 1.001 or whatever, but then the actual number inside of your account has not changed. Does that make sense?
It sure does. But then when does the actual number in my account change?
Never, only when you query it. So if I query it and say like, what is my UI amount, then it would do the math in order to figure out how much is in there, but it wouldn't actually change how much is in there.
Okay. So if I have 10 speaker tokens, and it has been compounding for a year, and now I should be having 20. How can I go to an exchange and sell those 20 that I've compounded? Or is it not actually fully compounded? I'm just not sure I understand that.
So again, it's just a UI trick. You always have 10 tokens underneath. It's just what it looks like changes. So it would be up to the exchange in order to query the sort of UI amount, or to calculate the UI amount of your tokens, so that way it could show you 20. So for example, USDC is denominated out to 6 decimal points, which means if I transfer you $1 in USDC, I'm actually transferring you 1 million tokens. So this is an extension to that adds a little bit of math in order to figure out what the UI amount is.
Okay.
So is it like you have the original amount and then you multiply it by interest and time? Something
Yeah, pretty
like that.
much.
It does that every time it queries?
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so it assumes continuous compounding. So if you were to query it at one point, it'll show you one thing. You query it literally a second later, it'll give you something else.
So you don't need a crank because you're not updating state. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's the point. Like, I think the crank is a non-starter, to be honest. Like we've had long discussions about this. I had a long discussion even yesterday about this, someone who wants to create this type of token. And I told them eventually, like, go with this model. It's going to be so much easier in the end.
It's very clever, actually.
I hope it's not too clever though. You know what I mean?
I mean, the implementation is probably going to be a little bit contrived because one thing is not equals to the other. So I don't know how you do checks for how much balance somebody has. I guess on chain you do have slot time and you have the interest. So you could also do the math on chain as well. But yeah, it's clever. It's cool.
Actually, what's also nice. Sorry.
To that point, if I let's say I get 10 tokens on Monday, and then somebody else gets 10 tokens on Friday, and they're compounding at the same rate, how do you keep track of what amount of tokens are compounding when?
So that's what's clever about it. You don't have to, because if I transfer 10 tokens to you on Monday, underneath, let's say it's 9 tokens, but then I transfer you 10 tokens a few days later, it's going to be less. Or sorry, it's going to be more tokens. It's going to be less tokens. So it's like if I gave you, let's say it's a continuously compounding thing, I send you what on the UI looks like 10 interest-bearing USDC. Underneath, it's really 9. But a few days later, I transfer you what looks like 10 USDC. Underneath, it's really 8.7.
Okay. So you're basically, all you have to do is track like basically increase since inception of the token, and all the transfers will make sense based on that kind of initial the initial interest rate or whatever the changes are to that interest rate. Okay.
Exactly.
Really, really clever.
Interesting.
Hope so.
Okay,
So I guess at that point also at some point we're just going to be transferring tokens that don't technically exist, right? We're just transferring like UI amounts that don't actually exist in token accounts somewhere.
Well, they always do exist. They're just less than you think.
Right. But if I had, let's say, if 500 tokens turned into, or 10 tokens turned into 500 tokens, and I transferred somebody 10 tokens, you're technically transferring like non-existent tokens, like not the ones that are actually in your account, right? They're just a UI amount, or I'm sending part of that UI amount. You
would send part of your total principal, right? Because like let's keep the number simple. Let's say you started off with 10, now they're worth 20. You want to send 10. Underneath, you would send 5.
Okay.
Because you would send half of the amount, so half of the UI amount.
Okay, right, that makes sense.
Or rather, half of both the UI and the total amount.
Okay, so can we go ahead to the next question? All right. Soul Andy is asking if you can go into detail on what is required for confidential token to work.
Yeah, so for confidential tokens, it's there's a lot of stuff. It's complicated, to be honest. We need well, actually, it's going to be less complicated now, but what you need is you've got your wallet key already, your sort of key that you're familiar with. You're going to need an Elgamal key, which is a different private key. It can be derived from your wallet key. This is sort of like a flow that we're trying to come up with the wallets. But those are really the two things that you would need. And then you would need your token account that's extended with confidential transfers. And then you would create the proofs with your Elgamal key. You would encrypt the amounts, I think also with that Elgamal key. And then you would upload those proofs to the chain. And then you would initiate the transfer. And then the program would actually validate that all the proofs were correct. And then it would apply the encrypted amounts to your account, to the other person's account. If that makes sense, or is there more detail that you need?
Andy, can you give us feedback? Okay, yeah, I hope we're good. Okay, he wrote something in the chat.
It's in 1.16 will have everything, yeah.
Okay, 1.6 or 1.16?
1.16.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, then I saw another question again from Elizabeth. If we have already, oh no, sorry. Can you clarify that you can close an empty mint account on 22? My understanding is that you could not do this previously.
So you can close an empty mint account in Token 2022 if you have it extended with that mint close authority extension. And it's correct, you could not do this previously. So every single non-compressed NFT that's been created since the inception of Solana and SPL token is still on chain somewhere.
Okay. All right, then. Do we have any last questions?
It looks like Elizabeth also asked about upgrading to Token 22. Is the amount of upgrades worth it? It depends. It depends on your app, to be honest. If you're doing trading, it's a little bit of work because you need to probably redesign your instruction interface to take in both token programs. If you're just doing one token at a time, honestly, it's really not that hard. It's like a few lines of code that you need to change. It's really not bad. But if you're doing trading, it's more complicated.
Okay, so another question. For confidential transfer, will there be a view key for tax purposes? A view key for tax purposes?
So yes, there can be. Well, you will be able to view everything, obviously, because they're your tokens. And then the confidential transfer mint can be configured with an auditor key. And the auditor key will be able to look at every single transfer that's done.
All right. And can you give us an estimate to when Token 2022 will be production ready?
Elusive is doing something different. Don't worry about it. They have a different model entirely. These are working in different dimensions of confidentiality. But we're hoping that Token 22 will be ready in September. Around the time we're waiting on 1.16 to hit mainnet and for an audit to finish. So sometime in the fall, hopefully September.
Okay. And then hopefully the last time, I'm giving you one more chance if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to...
Sorry, can I ask a question? Because you mentioned this and I'm really curious about what's going on. That you mentioned something about permanent delegation, but you specifically said that governments were interested in it. Can you give me some real life applications for it? And then I mean, like why they would be interested in the permanent delegation, especially I'm interested in understanding why, like I guess you're using the Solana ecosystem as a way to, I'm assuming you're trying to promote this for other governmental use, but also I wanted to know if there are other applications for NGOs as well for this type of application that you're saying about using the permanent delegation.
Yeah, so the reason I mentioned it is because very soon after that we developed this, we developed it actually at first for more of like an NFT style use case for harbinger taxes. harbinger? No, what is harbinger taxes, where essentially anyone can bid for your NFT and then you have to put up a certain amount of money in order to keep it. Otherwise, the other person gets it. So we added this permanent delegate thing. And then a few weeks later, I think it was in the US, they put in a law saying that stable coins essentially must be clawbackable, so that this means some other authority must be able to move tokens at any point. So that's why we had to add this. It was the US government forcing this. And then as far as NGOs, maybe you can give me more details about what you're trying to do that might need a permanent delegate.
That's what I was curious. I mean, because I imagine, like, if the government, if you're using a permanent delegation to, I'm assuming to restrict who has a token or so on, for security reasons, or either to make sure that it's, like, I don't know, I guess archivable to keep track on, whatever the permanent delegate, the moving members or whatever. I was wondering if this is also, if there was also some application for this with the idea of the permanent delegate as so that could be used for NGOs as well.
I'd have to know more about the NGO use case some more, and maybe it depends on what jurisdiction they're operating in. So all that say, it depends. I'm not a lawyer. Do not take this as legal advice.
No, that's cool. Thank you.
I have an unrelated question just to programs in general. Me and a friend of mine for Bunker will have to be, we're creating a native program pretty soon. We've made it SMD and everything. And we have to implement a native program for allowing an extra, like, on-chain elliptic curve calculations to support another curve. And I'm wondering who the person is to ask that's done a lot of native program work. If it's you or somebody else that I can get in contact with. I've never written or implemented a native program, so I was wondering if I can contact somebody to get the lay of the land a little bit.
Yes, I mean, it's mostly, you can see who's sort of done the PRs on it. I think the last time it was Sam, who's our cryptographer. So probably you can reach out to him. I would say, look at how the program is done already on I guess the 25519 program is really simple. You're probably gonna, you just need the syscalls, right?
So we were going to do syscalls, but the consensus has been on doing it as a native program to leave it as to kind of leave space for optimization, or have it be optimized kind of from the get-go. So it's going to be analogous to the ED25519 and the SECP2561 that already exist. So those two native programs.
They're not really programs though.
They're precompiles. They're technically not like, you can't, I know you can't CPI into them, and that's why that's why it's also so such unfamiliar territory. It's like making the.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're actually doing a real program, in that case, you're going to want to look at something like the stake program or the vote program. Those are ones that actually operate in that way. Because otherwise the precompile, I've gotten so confused looking at the precompiles in the past, like it's only going to confuse you further. So I'd say don't look at that code.
I mean, we have to implement it as a precompile, like we have to merge a precompile for it. Because we have to. If it's just a precompile,
then it's super easy. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay, sick. That's confidence inducing.
Yeah, no, it's super easy, because pretty much what it's doing is that in the bank, the idea is that if there's a bad signature inside of the transaction, you want to reject it before you even spin up a VM. So pretty much you're just calling like it's just a static call in order to verify a signature or whatever. So in your case, yeah, look at how either of those programs is implemented. It's really quite simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Sick. Thanks.
And then put in a feature gate.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think from what I can tell, it'll be, if it gets implemented, like 1.17, if anything.
Yeah, you'd have to get it in like soon, because we're probably going to branch 1.7. Oh no, I guess you got a little bit of time. I think we'll branch 1.17 in September.
Yeah. We're just waiting on the last approval from the SIMD. So.
Sounds good. Fingers crossed.
Thanks, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, then. Thank you, John. So I don't really want to take much more of your time, but if you guys have any more questions, do you have like some way they can contact you? I think you don't have a Twitter, right?
No, I don't have a Twitter. So you can always reach out to me, like, honestly, just like send me an email if you want, or yeah, very, very deliberately. I've like every once in a while I see a tweet thread. I'm like, goodness gracious, people like really, it's a lot of work. And I have a lot of respect for people that have the patience for it, but goodness, it's just like, it's a lot of work. Just like tag me on Discord or something. I'm pretty much always on the Solana Tech Discord. Just at John. And then if you want, we can always do some DMs there, although I prefer to do things in public, obviously.
All right, then. Also, one thing I want to mention is that we got another Glassy hour next week. So there is no pause that next week because we are kind of rescheduling the Glassy hours to the other week where we don't have the town hall. So it's now Wednesdays from 7 p.m. And it's basically in the other week where we don't have the town hall. And yeah, so we got another Glassy hour next week, but it's still to be discussed what topic we're going to have there. But yeah, make sure to sign up and hopefully learn something again. And I want to thank you, John, and thanks for taking your time. And yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Super cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean, Yusuf. Have a good day, guys.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.